All right, parents, here we go again. It's the Ask Dr. Tony episode. This is the Experience Miracles podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, an expert in pediatrics, neurodevelopmental disorders, and drug-free, nervous system-focused healthcare. On this weekly episode, I'll be addressing the top questions on every parent's mind. If there's one thing we love and welcome, it's parents who never stop learning, asking the hard questions, and advocating for your kiddos like none other. So get ready for some real talk, real-life clinical and parenting experience, and real easy to understand answers that will help your family take action and get to that next level of health and healing. You ask, I answer. Let's dive into today's episode. All right, parents, another Q&A episode. Here we go. This one is all about sensory issues, but very specifically, what the heck is going on if your child is hypersensitive to pain? Like little cuts, little scrapes, mosquito bite, rush me to the ER, life is over. What is going on with this hypersensitivity to pain? It's the same neurosensory neuroscience conversation we're going to have with another set of questions we get all the time is, hey, my child is hypersensitive to certain noises or certain smells. I'm going to focus on the pain conversation with this one, but it's very adjacent and analogous neurophysiologically to all sensory challenges. And also with this one, let's sneak in here because the science is actually pretty much the exact same. What if your child doesn't sweat? What if they get sick but don't get a fever? So you're wondering, wait a minute, are they just having this like insane, awesome immune system? Here's one of the conundrum with sensory and spectrum kiddos. A lot of autism sensory kiddos, it's pretty apparent that they have these chronic gut immune respiratory issues. They're sick all the time. But it's almost like there's no middle ground. A lot of other kiddos never get a fever. They never sweat. They never get these things out of the body. And that's a big deal too. And actually the neuroscience behind that is very same to similar as to why certain kids have such heightened pain sensitivity. So let's go into that. Number one thing, though, I want to sneak in here real quick. I do a terrible job with this in the podcast, so I took a note and it's sitting right in front of me. I am hypersensitive in a good way to reviews of this podcast. I get so excited to get on here and answer your questions and interview other experts and teach you stuff that serves your family and changes your family, that if by chance that has our goal, our prayer, our plan, and the whole purpose, entire solo purpose we have for this podcast is to transform your kids, your family's health and well-being. If we've been able to do that in some little way, medium way, or big way, in any way at all, if you could take the time, even just hit pause on this episode right now and go to wherever you're listening, so Apple or Spotify or wherever it may be, if you could give us 5 stars and you could even leave a little authentic, heartfelt review, just type a few words in there. I'm not kidding about my kind of neuro joke here of being hypersensitive. My team, we see those, I get to read those, and I can't even tell you how inspiring and motivating it is to me to keep stepping up to the microphone here and doing all that I can to serve your family and really transform the health of millions of kids, because we got to get out of, this perfect storm world and into this nervous system focused hope answers drug-free help world to get that job done. So if you could leave us a review, even if it's just 5 stars, type anything out, totally fine with that. But that really helps the podcast grow. And if we grow this podcast, we grow our impact to millions of kids and families all over the world. And we get so many more kids experiencing miracles and living the life exactly how God intended them. Healthy, not hypersensitive to pain, not with immune system dysregulation or subluxation or all the things we talk about. We only talk about those things. We only talk about conditions. We only talk about challenges. We only talk about the negative things so that we can get the answers and the explanations to you as to why that's happening. Here's the root cause and causes, so that we can turn that corner and say, here's the interventions, here's the care strategies that are going to get results with your kiddos. Because the other side of the storm is just an incredible, massive, incredibly hard to describe quality of life. And honestly, that's also just called normal. Kids are supposed to be healthy. They're not supposed to have hypersensitivities and sensory challenges and everything else. That's not how they're designed. They're designed to live optimally. So there's my little commercial. Please leave us a review. That would literally mean the world to us and help us reach more kids. All right. So underneath hypersensitivity to pain, heightened increased pain sensitivity, is two words: sympathetic dominance. Now, in the sympathetic system, which is our gas pedal, fight or flight, emergency kit, right? It's like the alarm's going off. Boom, we better tighten things up. We better shut down the gut. We better tighten our muscles. We better increase the blood flow. We better get ready for battle. Well, what happens in battle? Oftentimes, injury, right? Oftentimes injury leads to pain, leads to sensitivity, leads to, hey, we need to close that. We need to get clotting factors in there. We need to we make inflammation the devil, right? When it comes to talking about chronic illness, because chronic inflammation and chronic neuroinflammation especially is a really bad problem. But in the short term, inflammation's actually good if we are literally going through an acute stressor or an injury. Well, the nervous system, when it's running on autopilot, which is what the autonomic nervous system does, when it's stuck into sympathetic dominance, it's like we're always in battle. It's like your kiddo is always fighting something. It's always in this hypersensitive alarm system state. And that creates hyperexcitability of the pain pathways. So when sympathetic dominance goes up, subluxation sets in. Subluxation is restriction of neuromotor tone and range of motion. When things are moving and they have normal tone, that stimulates the brain with what's called proprioception. Proprioception is good. It's calming. It's relaxing. You ever been wound up? Actually, proprioception is movement. Ever seen a baseball player get hit by a pitch and they say, walk it off, rub some dirt on it? Well, that's proprioception. You go to walk, you stimulate proprioceptors, and they override pain receptors. You rub on it, and those motion receptors, mechanoreceptors, proprioceptors, override the pain perception, which is called nociception. When sympathetic dominance is at play, there's a hyper-excitability and constant triggering of these nociceptive pain-based fibers. So this subluxation and this what's called disafferentation, so abnormal, distorted sensory input into the brain, now because of subluxation and disafferentation, the brain doesn't know what's important and what's not. Everything is amplified, including pain. And I probably can assume that if you're asking the question, hey, my child has hypersensitivity to pain, they probably physically, right? We'll call it that. They probably have hypersensitivity emotionally, behaviorally, right? And all of those signals are amplified as well. So the small bumps, the tiny scratches, the little bug bites, the certain clothing textures or the certain foods, it's almost, some kids will literally say, I can't eat that food. It hurts my mouth or it hurts my stomach. That's sympathetic dominance, subluxation, disafferentation at play. Now, with this one, because it's such a close neurosensory physiological cousin to hypersensitivity to pain, when I saw this question come in, I know we've also been asked a few times, hey, my kiddo never actually gets a fever and they don't seem to sweat. Is that good? No, it's the same sympathetic dominant story. So what's happening there is whenever this nociception sensory pain signaling is overactive, it short circuits what are called the visceral sensory pathways. Now, hang with me. I know this is one of the nerdiest podcasts out there, but the visceral system is our organs and our glands, right? And our different organ systems. So the immune system, right? The vagus nerve is responsible for transmitting immune system and thermoregulation signals into the brain. Well, when the sympathetic system is subluxated, dominant, and running the show, it gets in the way of the vagus nerve. It shuts off the pathway of the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve becomes suppressed because the sympathetics, the opposite of that is the para, right? The counter, the brake pedal, and the main parasympathetic nerve in the body is the vagus nerve. especially what we know about neuroanatomy, is that the vagus nerve is the main air traffic control connection to the immune system, to inflammation, and to regulating our body's temperatures and pressures. So what happens when a child is exposed to a virus or exposed to a bacteria, if there's no subluxation, no sympathetic dominance, no vagus nerve dysfunction, the nervous system does its job. And it says, hey, we better increase the temperatures. So the vagus nerve goes over here and it sends a bat signal over to the thermoregulatory system, and it gets into things like the hypothalamus. And I could get a little bit nerdier, but we really don't need to. But it gets into different glands and different tissues that trigger these responses. And it says, hey, increase the heat in here. We got some guys we need to sweat out. They're not supposed to be in here. These viruses and bacteria, the innate intelligence of the body, which operates through the nervous system, designed by God, knows that viruses and bacteria don't like heat. So the first thing when the system is working well that the body will do in response to a pathogen, in response to viruses and bacteria, is just crank up the thermostat and sweat that sucker out. See what I did? See what we did there? See what we said there? Temperature goes up, increases neurobiocirculatory function, which increases excretory or detoxification and elimination. Sweat is essential to get stuff out. Could use a different S word there, right? Get these little suckers out of there. And so not only does that do the job, so increase circulation, increase sweating, get detoxification from that, the fever then becomes another signal to other components of the immune system to say, hey, fire up. We need you. Let's start making antibodies. Let's start making, I'm not going to go back to my neuroimmunology class, but the Th1 system, which is this first expressive system, which says we need heat, we need to battle, call the Army, call the Navy, get them going, let's go. Everybody get rolling. We got an invader. We got to go attack it. Well, then the attackers need to come. And so there's this initial Th1 response, and then there's the follow-up response, which will fully clear the bacteria and the pathogen out of the body. So what actually happens to kids who have these hypersensitivities, sensory issues, spectrum issues, and they don't get fevers, and they don't sweat, and they don't detox, is they actually start to become completely overloaded with things like strep bacteria, other kinds of unwanted, they can be opportunistic bacteria, some that the body needs, but it can be completely overgrown. There can be viruses, there can be parasites, there can be pathogens. And this doesn't have to be some genetic deficiency. This does not have to be MTHFR. This isn't always the case. It can literally be as simple as subluxation, disafferentation, and dysautonomia triggering sympathetic dominance and vagus nerve suppression, which then gets in the way of this whole cascade, which would be the pain signaling to the visceral pathway from the vagus nerve, which would increase temperature and increase circulatory. So that's one way to kill out bad guys and get them out of the body. And then the fever and the pathogen and the release that comes from that triggers more components of the immune system downstream, and we need those too. So we need the acute response, and we need the complete response. I want you to think of it that way. The vagus nerve needs to be on the job, fully functioning to get the initial acute response of the immune system, and the vagus nerve needs to be on the job to get the complete, let's get this crap all the way out of the body. We shouldn't need detox agents. We shouldn't need chelation. We shouldn't need binders. We should be able to get those things out of our body naturally. God designed a very robust and incredible neurothermal immuno detoxification elimination system. And it's actually pretty simple. It's movement, motility, it's fever, heat, and it's sweat and poop and diarrhea and cough and mucus and expelling these bad guys out. It's not so much about all this fancy stuff that shows up on lab work. When we evaluate a kiddo who is hypersensitivity to pain, and then they don't have fevers and they don't sweat, we can literally see the problem staring at us, hidden right in plain sight. it's stuck within their sympathetic nervous system. They are subluxated. So pain feels louder and the internal immune thermal signals feel and function quieter. So this sensory mismatch problem where this increased pain sensitivity is often paired with these blunted visceral, so immune detoxification responses, creates a very confusing presentation. Kids may scream from a minor scrape and freak out, but they could be fighting off a heck of a virus and you would barely notice it, and they don't give any signals or signs much at all. So they're hypersensitive to tags and seams and noises and all these other sort of things, but yet they're completely unbothered by being overheated and doing all of this other sort of stuff. So this subluxation, this dysautonomia, this distortion of sensory processing, it's the explanation for increased pain sensitivity and decreased sweat, decreased detoxification, and all of those functions there. So if this is your kiddo and you're like, my goodness, they're so sensitive to little things, except when it's a big thing, then they seem to be completely unbothered. That's the neurophysiology we're talking about here. And it's not something that is just genetic or how they're wired. It's neurological disorganization. And the way that neurologically focused chiropractic helps is first, we need to get adjustments into the system to calm those sympathetic pathways. Also, anything else you can do to calm your child's sensory overwhelm and overload system. So sensory calming activities are something you really want to be focused on if your child has these hypersensitivities to pain, but blunted responses to, and doesn't have fever and doesn't have, sweat and detoxification. And we need to calm the sensory storm first. And in the same, that's 1A, 1B, activate, get that vagal tone parasympathetic system going again, reorganize their sensory motor integration. And now this two-way street, really it's more than two ways, this multi-system communication will come back online. Now, here's the final thing I need to let you know about once you start to get your kiddo, if they're struggling with this, and you start to get them adjusted, or you start to do these things that will improve, reset, reorganize, repair their nervous system. They will have to play catch up. What I have found is that our kiddos who have this hypersensitivity to pain, that's a pretty black and white response. That's a pretty smooth process and progress. When they start to get adjusted, it just starts to fade away. They become less sensitive and parents start to notice, hey, we just had this, they spilled this on their lap and they didn't freak out. They got bumped into by brother and they didn't freak out. They fell off their bike and skinned their knee and they got right back up and started riding again, and we didn't have a 15-minute meltdown. So that stuff tends to just fade as we make our adjustments and get better. The sweat, the lack of fever and lack of sweating, often what needs to happen in the healing process for your child, if that's the case, it's what we call the parasympathetic pendulum swing. Now, if you're thinking, geez, I thought this guy was super nerdy, and he just said parasympathetic pendulum swing. Well, I've achieved another level of nerdiness in your life, right? And you would be accurate. And there's actually many, many more. So what that means, if you think of a pendulum effect, it's like, oh, we're all the way over here. And then we need to swing all the way to the other side before we can kind of settle back into the middle. Whenever a child has been sympathetic dominant and their vagus nerve has been suppressed, so their fever response has been suppressed, their sweat response has been suppressed, their detoxification and elimination response has been suppressed, sometimes within a matter of just a few adjustments, and oftentimes within a matter of a few weeks, in a chronic sympathetic dominant vagus nerve, sweat, fever, suppression cases, it can take months, but it rarely takes months. It usually happens very much in the early stages of getting adjusted. The nervous system will be so excited to be recalibrating and repairing and get back to the middle that it'll swing the pendulum all the way to excessive parasympathetic expression. Just think of it this way. If you are going down the road and you're going a little bit too fast, you're on the gas, sympathetic fight or flight, you're flying down I-90, heading into Chicago. Now, I live in the burbs and live in the country, so I love going into Chicago, but I'm a country boy. So it's phenomenal living in the burbs. We're all the way on the edge. I go to Chicago. We can go hang out, get a great meal. Chicago's a great city. And then you know what? The country is great no matter where you're at. So as fast as we get in there, I drive faster home because I'm like, oh, great day in the city. And then my hypersensitive sensory system, being a farm boy in the city, is like, get me out of here. I'm overwhelmed. Get me back to the country. So let's say I'm flying down the road and I'm going really, really, really fast because I want to get home. Somebody pulls in front of me. I can't just slowly hit the brakes. I've been going too fast. I'm speeding. So when a child has been stuck in sympathetic dominance and this sensory overdrive, the brain is smart. It'll oftentimes effectively, with this certain condition, these certain challenges, the fever suppression and the sweat suppression, often it's not actually even excessive, it's accurate in terms of reorganization. In the initial stages, we'll get this huge pendulum neurodetox release where the child will break into a massive fever. Sometimes even older kiddos will go up to 103, 104, and 105-ish, and they're kind of actually not even sick. They're just healing. Because the fever has been so offline and so suppressed for so long, it's like waking up. It's like a zombie, or I don't know. You ever see it's like Frankenstein waking up, or I don't know what. Oh gosh, I should have watched Dracula. I don't know. Does he get up and get after it? Oh my gosh, I'm butchering this analogy. First we were on the highway. Now we're watching kids movies. I don't know what's going on here, but there's neurophysiology mixed with quite metaphors and analogies right now. So it's been asleep at the wheel for a long time. It's been shut down for a long time. So it comes out and on with a vengeance. If this is your kiddo, know that they're healing. Don't be freaked out by that fever. We'll put in the show notes with this one our article that helps you learn how to naturally support a fever. But if your child has been sensory, pain sensitive, fever and sweat suppressed, when you start getting them adjusted and their nervous system starts to actually heal, in the early stages, they will have to, and it's not even excessively, it's required, it's needed. They will go into a huge fever. They will probably sweat a ton. They might actually show some expression of getting sick. So stuff, crud coming up, cough, mucus, and they might even end up with diarrhea too, and stinky, funky, weird poop. Because the body is smart and it says, hey, we've been sympathetic dominant, hypersensitive to pain, and because we haven't been able to complete the neuroimmune job due to our vagus nerve suppression, we've got all these toxins, all these bacteria, all these viruses, all these parasites, all this bad stuff stuck in here. Guess what? The body knows it's in there. It's just been incapable of getting it out of there. Well, once you get neurologically focused chiropractic care and the nervous system's back doing its job, it's got to go back into the basement and do some deep cleaning and say, hey, how'd you get in here? You weren't supposed to be in here. We've been trying to get you out. Now we can. Let's go. And it'll do some massive spring cleaning. Celebrate that. Support that. Don't stuff that down. That's what your child's neuroimmune system, sensory system has been trying to do the whole time. So again, click the link in the show notes if you need to learn more about how to support the gut, support fever, and do things that build up neuroimmune, neurosensory resilience over time instead of shut it down and cover it up. Hope this one helped you. Keep the questions coming in. I love doing these episodes. I love getting you the answers you need. I kind of put a couple of them together, the hypersensitivity to pain, and then the questions, hey, my child doesn't get a fever. Is that a big deal? My child doesn't sweat. So sorry to my team who has to try and name this one because it's like 3 podcasts in one, but I had to do them all at once because it's all the same neurosensory physiology. God bless you. Be well. See you on the next one. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. Do you have a question that you would like to submit? Either send it to support@pxdocs.com with the subject Ask Dr. Tony, or head on over to our socials @pxdocs where you can submit your question in our stories every single week. Every kid counts and every family counts, so let's leave no questions left unanswered. If you loved this episode and you want to help us reach more kids, we would so appreciate if you left a review and a rating on your favorite platform. God bless. Be well. We'll see you on the next one.